How you doing? I'm Tim, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you tonight to our meeting of the Conscious Contact Speakers Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. We do meet here every Saturday. St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, and it's in Doylestown. 8:30, our fellowship, although tonight's a little different because we had the workshop prior, but food and fellowship start promptly at 8, our speakers at 8:30. The purpose of our group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God, reliance, and service to others through the practice and the teachings of the 12 steps. We do record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, please simply ask a member of the home group. This is an open meeting of AA. The group would like to welcome all newcomers or people who are here for their first time. If you are here for your first time tonight or you're new to AA, would you just please raise your hand for us? Very good. On the count of 3, we're all going to say 1, 2, 3. Welcome. Awesome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone who has a working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. Very, very good. If you're new to the group or you're new to AA, those hands are incredibly important. Are there any other announcements other than ones that have been made already for the good of AA tonight?
Again, my name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. We have flyers on the back table. Our anniversary is 4/22/17. Peter M's coming in to do this at 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. It's a 12-step big book workshop. Comes with a free lunch. Marion W. is going to come with him, and the pair of them are going to do that. We've secured a very, very good Al-Anon speaker to go in between the workshop, and then he'll speak again at that night. So if you guys are out and about and you want to have some fun and you want to hear a guy that's really a pretty spiritual dude when it comes to the big book, we do that all for fun and for free, so come out and see our website. We have a Conscious Contact Speaker Group Facebook page, which keeps you informed, not only with this group, but we try to be informative of what's going on up and down the whole East Coast. And if you have events or anything like that, feel free to place it in there, and it helps get us all connected and see what's going on. There's something going on every night of the week in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's the beauty of that Facebook. When it's used properly, it uses to connect us and lead us to people that are seeking recovery and really doing something other than just sitting in AA hoping something's going to happen. So if you're not like that and you are seeking, take advantage of that. We have a website. You can see our speakers are booked probably into the next year. You can just go on Google and Google Saturday night AA 1-hour speaker meeting Doylestown. Comes up in the first or second search. Go on there. It's a really great way to stay connected and see what's coming up. That's about all I got, and Tim will handle it. If you got any other announcements, please share.
Anybody else? For the good of AA. Yes.
Tom O'Neill, an alcoholic.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Friday, April 21st in York, Pennsylvania. White Rose Group will be celebrating the 49th anniversary. We got Ken C. from Sandusky, Ohio, coming in. We'll have you.
Ken is great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All the way in the back. Pete, I'm sorry, you have another announcement, sir? Yes, go ahead.
So the Bethlehem Area Host Committee from Pensacola, which is the Pennsylvania State Conference for Young People in AA, will be hosting the conference in August 25th to 27th. It's a full weekend. We'll have speakers, workshops, all sorts of things. So if you want any more information, please see me after the meeting, and I'll let you know.
Fantastic. Excellent. Anybody else? All right, guys, we have a meeting list and big books and stuff like that. All of those are available to you on easy terms. We do have a bunch of stuff on the back counter back there next to Pete. Pete raised his hand. You see back there on that counter with all kinds of good stuff. If you do happen to pick something up, there's a bucket there. Please deposit some money, all right? If you can't afford anything, we obviously will make that stuff available to you at no charge. I would like to also say, if you would like a CD of our speaker tonight, or any speaker we've had in the past, please see Ron or a home group member. They're also available for no charge. Now I have asked Anthony to come up to read the preamble for us tonight.
Hi, how's it going? I'm Anthony, I'm alcoholic. And this is the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I've asked Bill to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Thanks, Ed.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Bill, and I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, friends, we have a 7th tradition around here, which is why it's always fun and free, because you make it rain so well every Saturday night. So the baskets are coming around. I'd also like to take this moment while you're digging deep into your pockets to remind you about your cell phones, please. Could you please turn them off or mute them? Please know that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting and declining outside contributions. At this time, we are passing the baskets. We don't have any dues or any fees, but as you can tell, although we're sold out tonight, we do have lots of expenses with the CDs and the donuts and the cronuts and all that kind of stuff. Please, 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 please. No smoking on the church grounds. If you need to do it, I understand. Cross the street to the Dairy Queen. Cross the street to the VFW. Just don't leave your cigarette butts around, please. Okay? Now, it's my distinct pleasure. If you were here earlier, he was here he did a 4th step workshop, which really got the ball rolling for us. We're all excited about having our speaker tonight. He has come all the way to us from across the United States. He comes from the West Coast. He's on loan tonight to us from his home group, which is the Back to Basics group. I'd like to introduce tonight from San Francisco, California, Mr. Paul H.
Yeah. Yes, Paul Alcoholic. Thanks for having me, folks. And I always like to say my golden years were between about 2 and 4, and then everything went downhill from there. When I was a kid, I wasn't in an abusive situation. And I remember when I was playing, I was never worrying about will I be playing next week, because time hadn't set up yet. And I wasn't walking around my house thinking my room was too small or my mother was fat. I wasn't wanting to have Gap clothing or sunglasses. I wasn't trying to get into the moment because I hadn't entertained the insane idea I could be out of a moment. It was a different condition I seemed to be in that was normal. I wasn't looking for escape or meditation or going on retreats. And then something started to happen. And back then when I was young, I'd run into the room naked and all this stuff, a lot of spontaneity. And then around 5 or 6, from that point on, everything I ever did was accompanied by thought. That's when the self-seeming was born, was about 3 or 4, and it started to develop a story. And somehow or another, my interest and attention got caught up in my head. And I started to see life as happening to me instead of living life as happening. And irritability and restlessness started to set in. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was destined to find something, and when I found it, I knew that was what I was looking for. And I remember when I came in AA, they told me the root of the problem was obsession with self, so I used to look back at some of my life and start seeing those events in a new light, and one of them that stuck out in me was a day at school when I was about 11 years old. I was walking through the hallway, and a pretty girl said hello to me. And I went home and wondered what she meant by it for about 5 hours. To me, that's the root of the disease. I'm not much, but I'm all that I think about. I start seeing life as happening to me. It gets very myopic, and I cannot put myself in anyone else's shoes. So this started to build, and the irritability, restlessness, and discontent. So I had sports and everything like that, but really nothing was working. And then I had a night game. I was in Little League. I was 12 years old. I grew up in Long Island, New York. And my mother wasn't going to be coming to the game. I was going to walk home by myself. So after the game, some older guys came in with a couple of 6-packs of beer, and they gave me a beer. And my athletic career came to a screeching halt because I didn't know what I was looking for, but when I had that beer, I knew that was what I was looking for. And at that point, before then, when I was up at the plate and somebody left the stands, I took it personally. I thought they were leaving the game because I was there. And this preoccupation with self was sort of on the negative side. I felt a very strong suspicion that something was wrong with me that you could see. So most of my life, even at that early age, was like a song and dance to keep you from knowing what I knew about me. Yeah? So what occurred is I started to drink, and the first thing I realized is I have magnetic appeal to people in uniform when I drink. I started to attract consequences immediately. And like we say in AA, I didn't get in trouble every time I drank, but every time I was in trouble, I had been drinking. Now this was escaping my attention because I had a huge demand. I had to get out of something I thought I was in. And so what happened is I ran into other people like me at that age, and what we used to do was ride out 10-speeds in the spring and summer and look at people's houses. And if the garage door was open, we looked at it to see if they had any refrigerators or rectangular cardboard boxes, anything that could be holding a case of something. And we'd go back at night and get in there and steal it all and ride our bikes to the 15th hole of our town golf course because there was bushes, and hide them there, and we'd meet on the weekends and just drink and then piss around the town basically because we drank so much beer you got to let it out. So at first we'd get our wrists slapped, but suddenly after a few years, I was 16, I got kicked out of high school. I lived with my mother at this point. All the other siblings had moved. My father died when I was 9, and we increasingly got poorer. I wasn't recognizing it, but we had a house, then it was an apartment, then we moved into a 2-family house. And we had the downstairs apartment, and my mother had the bedroom, and I lived on a Castro convertible, a pull-out couch, and I used to sleep there. And now I'm out of school. My mother tries to get me a couple of jobs, but they don't stick. So I'm looking at my career options, which aren't that many, and I'm thinking, I'd like to have a home business. It wasn't going to be my home, it was my mother's, and I started to deal drugs out of my mother's house. Now, what happened is, underneath my mother's bedroom was a room down in the cellar, and there was a driveway, and there was an entrance through this glass door down to the cellar. I painted that room red, and I got these cut-out moons and stars that if you put them on the wall, when the lights are on, they seem to suck the light, and when you turn off the lights, they reflect it. At least they did for me, but that was happening. And I had posters of Jimi Hendrix and Don Juan picking peyote. We had a little mono stereo, and there was a little alcove. We put a shower curtain, so if anyone was lucky to meet the opposite sex, they could go horizontal there, yeah? And so this was my little office, and I had people come over a lot. So I was selling out of my mother's house. And then one night, I was walking home. I was going to meet 7 guys over there. I had 1,000 hits of LSD and, you know, all this stuff in there, drink all this alcohol. And I saw a construction light near a pothole. They used to have a big battery that would keep the thing blinking. I stole that. It was going to be like a cheap strobe light. Brought it into the room, and we all sat around it, watching it blinking on and off. And Jimi Hendrix was coming alive, turning into an alien and going back. And we were listening to a song called Third Stone to the Sun. You ever remember that? If you played it slow, he speaks to you. It speaks as if he's an alien visiting Earth. And that was sort of the mental state we were in. So we were not bothering anybody. We're just sitting there going off. And then suddenly there's a commotion at the door, and something breaks, and these 4 pot-bellied policemen rush into the room, and we're arrested. Yeah? So I tell them it was speed because back then LSD was like a threat to the way people lived, you know. It was like communism. It wasn't a good thing to be doing. And so I told them it was speed. We all get arrested. We get brought to jail. And really something happened that was an amazing event because the only thing I really had was loyalty with my peers. And one of these guys who I never really liked that just came over tried to sell me down the river. It was really a disappointing evening because my whole life was based on loyalty, and he was selling me down the river. I never forgot him. His name was Jack Finch. I'm not going to give him anonymity. And so what happens is we all get released, and then I get rearrested because the lab report comes back, and it's LSD. So now what happens is there's a train of circumstances gets set that brought me terrible misfortune I never felt I deserved. I started to get arrested like twice a week. The rest of the month I'd be fine, but the first week of every month for the next 5 months I got arrested twice. And it was amazing. I got arrested for a lot of things, and I got arrested for trying to leave the scene of the crime, which is impossible to do if you're the scene of the crime, yeah? And that's how I felt. I mean, I got arrested on a river. It's just amazing. Shit happened everywhere. So after this, I was 17, and they introduced me to a pre-probation program. I wasn't old enough to go to prison. So I started to have to go to court every week, do urinalysis. And I had a probation officer named George Thorson, who I ended up selling drugs to. And I was under this probation for 3 years. But the alcoholic of my type is I'm willing to pay any consequence tomorrow not to feel uncomfortable today. And the only solution I had to that irritability, restlessness, and discontent was to get loaded. And nothing was going to stop me. The cops weren't going to stop me. My mother wasn't going to stop me. My older brother wasn't going to stop me. Nothing could stop me. No human power. So what happened was, this just continued. At 20 years old, they released me on my own recognizances. My family had a meeting, and they decided by majority vote that Paul should take his show on the road. He can't live with Mom anymore. So I took myself to Miami, which was like Mecca to me, for what I did. And if you did what I did, you knew I did it. Just like I knew you did it. So from 20 to 25, at this point my idea of success was quite meager. When I was young, I wanted to be a marine biologist. After a few years of active alcoholism, my idea of success was not to be arrested, basically. And so in Miami, I never got arrested, so that was like the highlight of my career. What happened is I ran into, I don't know, should I just stay with alcohol or whatever? Does it matter? All right, well, when I was in Miami, I got introduced through an astrologist. I did it when I was from 19 to 23, I was pretty good. And this astrology lady had done my chart when I was good. She didn't know that something had changed. And she ran into me in Miami, and she wanted me to meet one of her clients who was born the same day I was, a woman, expecting that I was the same good guy that she knew in Brooklyn, but I wasn't. So this lady met me, and she introduced me to freebasing, cocaine. Her job was she was an escort for people from Washington in the government. For the weekend, you never see her, and then all week I was with her, and she wouldn't get high with anyone else but me. And she scared the bejesus out of me. I was hallucinating and really losing it, so I knew I had to leave Florida. So I did. I came back to New York, and I moved in with my sister. It was the winter time. And I knew things were going bad. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to get back into spirituality, and I went to a spiritual meeting, but I felt too disconnected from it. And as I was going home, it was a freezing night in Long Island. It was January 30th on a Sunday. I stopped at a bar that my friend was a bartender at, and there was only 2 people in the bar, him and a waitress. And I sat at the bar, and he gave me some Quaalude, and a couple of shots of Grand Marnier. And then I left to go home because nothing was happening. I got home, and that irritability, restlessness, and discontent occurred, and my mental process started advertising that a big party had erupted at this bar, and I was missing out on something. So I got into, and I was missing out on something, just not what I thought. So I drove back to the bar, and the last thing I remember is the light going off in the car. The next thing I remember, I woke up in a horizontal position. I didn't know what was occurring, but I saw my sister-in-law in the doorway, and I knew I was screwed. And what had happened was I got hit by the same car twice. This can only happen to an alcoholic, you know. The guy hit me as I was crossing that street, and he didn't know what he hit, so he backed up over me. And I woke up in the hospital, and that was the beginning of a 2-year hospital melodrama with me as the star of it. I had 10 compound fractures of the legs, broken hip, broken shoulder, lacerated stomach. I was alone in a hospital bed for 10 months. I had been broken so many times, yet I just kept getting broken. The loneliness of that 3 by 7 foot bed or world just broke me completely. But I didn't die. And the parasite of alcoholism was still living off of me. As soon as I got out of that situation, it took 10 months, 12 months. I got a job out here in California. Are we in California? No, we're on the East Coast. I got a job in California with my friend with a chance of being a whole new person. And the same old person just duplicated itself. Now I'm selling coke on crutches. It was pathetic. I thought I had it going on. I was moving around. It was insane. And it went on like this. It started 1980. By 1981, I moved to San Francisco, and I returned to intravenous drug use. From 81 to 85, I basically lived on a bottom. And when I hit a bottom, I usually moved in, and I invited you over, only to be evicted to a lower bottom. And it had gone so far, I didn't know if there was a low enough I couldn't go to. This went on for about 4 years. What happened was I overdosed. When I came to, like usual, the police were in the hospital room. I was going to be arrested. They got called to something else, so I was released by myself at 8:30. I went to where I was living. I had spent the rent money I was supposed to give to the landlady the night before. She was going to be home at 6. I got back there at 10. I proceeded to drink all her liquor, use her phone, and around 5:30, I said, what am I going to do? I had a whole day to plan my escape, but at 5:30, I got to get out of here. And what happened is, a girlfriend of mine, who became an ex-girlfriend quickly, she had dropped me off at a place in San Francisco called Delancey Street, which is a drug and alcohol program. And I had walked in there, and they had informed me of what the place was, and by the time I got back out, she had gone. So I kept on for these next 6 months, but I remembered it that day. And I walked down from 48th and Fulton in San Francisco to the headquarters of Delancey Street. I think they have a chapter in New York City. And I walked in at 8th and Fulton, and when you walked in, there was a bench. And if you sat on the bench, it signified you'd lost the game of life, yes? You were basically coming over to the sidelines, hopefully malleable to some suggestions. But I wasn't. I was just watching a video of me. When I came in, they had a clock like that across the way. I'm rushing incredibly. I've been speaking too much today. And I looked at the clock, and it said 6 o'clock, and I said to myself, I'm going to give them till 6:30 to see me, or I'm out of here. Like I had a lot of important engagements to keep. I didn't have a pot to piss in, I had nowhere to go, but I'm already putting a condition on the situation. 6:27, they asked me in a room, they're going to interview me, to see if I'm worthy of being in Delancey Street. They had a very high bar, convicts and drug addicts. So 26, they start talking to me, everything's going over my head, but one thing they said got my interest was, do you want a place to stay tonight? And that's what I wanted. They said, if you want a place to stay tonight, you have to make a 2-year commitment. So I said, sure, like I could trust myself for an hour. So suddenly they say, hey, you're a member of Delancey Street. And they released me into the mass population of 300 clients at 6:30. The beautiful thing was, Delancey Street was a big enough buffer between me and me. I was temporarily separated from the activeness of alcoholism, but the lateness was still there, like a parasite waiting in the bush for its opportunity. I stayed there the 2 years. I never got loaded, followed their suggestions, went to college, seemingly got my life back. I reached the 21, and the funny thing is, after about 12 months, I started to think again, which wasn't a good idea. And I thought about my problem, and I said it's narcotics, which it was. But I made a little amendment. I could probably drink, which I didn't run by anyone in the facility. I just stored it in there, and I went on my way. At the 20-month mark, they brought me in again, and they said, listen, your 2 years is going to be over soon. Do you want to re-up for 5 years? Or do you want to work out? I said, I think I'll take the workout program, which is you had to get a job, get a checking account, get a car. If you fulfilled all those things, you could leave at the 24-month mark. And that's what I did. I got a job delivering specialty hardware, got a Toyota Corolla, had a checking account. I get out at 24 months. All you got to do is find a place to live. So I find a place on Larkin and Filbert in the city. Beautiful place. 2 young girls are there. I like to say my realtor was Dr. Jekyll. They liked Dr. Jekyll, but Mr. Hyde was going to be moving in, because that's exactly what happened. They loved Dr. Jekyll. I signed the thing. I moved in. But as soon as I left Delancey Street, when I got off of work at 5 o'clock, it seemed like an eternity to 11 when I'd go to bed. And I didn't know what to do with myself. But the parasite did. So the parasite started running a show inside my head once again, what I'd been missing for the last 2 years. It wasn't factual. It was totally fiction. Yeah? Like getting shot at and everything was never mentioned. It was just, great little times I had with my junkie friends, all that. I bought the advertising, got in my car, which I was going to lose 2 days later, drove to a bar I used to go to called the Rose and Thistle. We used to call it the Nose and Sniffle. It was at Polk in California, a very famous place in San Francisco. So I go to this bar. Now, being obsessed with self, I'm thinking the bartender's getting my newsletter and he's not going to serve me, but he doesn't remember me from Adam. I go in there, I order my first beer in 2 years. I start drinking the beer. Nothing happens. The lights don't come on, the police don't come in, AA doesn't show up. So I order a second beer. I start drinking the second beer. Halfway through it, it's not enough for me. I want more. Now, more could mean more alcohol. It can mean something else. To me, it means something else. So I started looking around the room to see if I could see anyone who sells more. And the same guy that used to sell more 2 years ago, he had like a franchise there. He's still there. So I kissed his ass sufficiently to get some more. I walked out to the car. I had a sniff of more, and it was like that movie The Shining, when Jack Nicholson goes through the bathroom door at the end. Here's Johnny. I was possessed by the parasite of alcoholism. And I'm telling you, alcoholism is a mental parasite. It doesn't have a life, it gets one through us. Yeah? So I went on a 10-month run, and if you've been on a run, it's a misnomer, because after a few weeks you're walking very gingerly, yeah? After a few more weeks you're limping. After a few more weeks you're dragged back to that condition of what? Of being pitifully, incomprehensibly demoralized. I went to college. I've been clean for 2 freaking years, and I'm back into the same situation, but worse. So what occurred is, at the end of that 10-month run, I went out one night, St. Patrick's Day in San Francisco. 2 days later, I ended up in a trailer park about 2 hours north, without any memory of how I got there. I was sitting in this trailer with a guy drinking a bottle of Royal Gate vodka. Very, very high-level vodka. I've seen some of its, containers now, and their customer service was incredible. Because before, when I was young, they were glass, and if you dropped it, your night was ruined. Now they're plastic. They bounce back. Yeah. So me and him, I'm looking at this guy, and he has a big head, bulbous nose, and varicose veins, and I say to myself, this guy's a bum. And lo and behold, he's looking at me like I'm a bum. And that was a moment of clarity. And I'm telling you something. Something happened that I did not believe could happen. My head stopped, yeah? And it was like a portal opened. And something was downloaded, like a CNN news flash. Just a headline, not a story. And I'm not going to curse, so I'm going to say it. It was, I'm screwed. Now, a lot of people that knew me knew I'd been screwed for quite a while, but in a way it was truly news to me. Because my muscle of denial was like Arnie Schwarzenegger's. I had been keeping out a lot of fucking reality. Oh, sorry, I cursed there right there. I tried my best. It's progress, not perfection. Yeah. But suddenly it collapsed in me. And something occurred. See, when it says in the big book, or in our steps, I don't agree with the first step where it says I'm powerless over alcohol. But I do agree with this description that I admitted to my innermost self. Because I couldn't find my innermost self. I was stuck in my head, but something pierced through my head and went to the innermost. And it was done. Completely done. The whole enchilada of sobriety was downloaded, and it's just been playing itself out for 29 years. That night, I called up a woman that I knew who had known me and partied with me. Of course, she was a nurse. We get to know a lot of nurses usually. And she decided, I sounded humble enough that she decided to come and help me one more time. She drove up from the city, and that's an 1.5-hour drive. In that 1.5-hour drive, I had a miraculous alcoholic recovery. I wanted to get loaded again. But I was in that dilemma that many of us find ourselves in. We don't have any money. So we have to convince someone else to get what we want to do. And at this point, my batting average wasn't that good. I was looking a little rough, and my charm wasn't working like it once did. So I was one angry mofo, basically, because, it's such an exquisite hell not getting what you want. And even when you get it, you're emptier than before. So what happened is, I started to try to talk her into getting a 6-pack of Talls, buy the dirty magazines, cop the drugs, rent the hotel room. She had followed that equation with me many times. It hadn't been that satisfying for her. So she said, no, we're not going to do that this time. She says, do you want a place to stay tonight? And I said, yeah, I do. And she says, you got to go to an AA meeting. And to me, this sounded like great progress from the last time I had that deal. I made a 2-year commitment. She's asking for 1 hour. I could do that on my head. So I said, sure. So she took me to my first AA meeting. It was a men's meeting. She couldn't come in. Dropped me off. Salvation Army. Now it's called Cesar Chavez in Valencia in San Francisco. And I've been clean and sober ever since. What happened to me, because my mother wanted me to stop. My friends wanted me to stop. I wanted to stop. The state wanted me to stop. No human power could stop it, and yet something stopped it. That urge in me was like a radioactive isotope. I had no power to say no, and it was constant. I was constantly looking to try to get out of self. I went to sleep at her house, and the miracle was really consummated while I was asleep. I woke up, and that urge to get loaded had been diminished, and I could think something else. And what I thought was, I better call this AA and find out if they have an earlier meeting, because I'm not going to make it till 8 o'clock. And they said, yes, there's one at 12. It was called High Noon. It's still there, but at a different location. And I went to that meeting, and I haven't stopped going since. If I was new today, or if I was working with someone new, what I would ask them to pray for is the ability to be convinced, and let's get on with it. We are overmatched. This parasite, we are easy prey to. It talks as you. It perceives as you. You think it's you, and it's not. It's a hostile takeover. And it's not freedom as a self, it's freedom from a self. The self, as we've talked about in the 4th step share, it's a very important statement to me on page 64. It says, being convinced, and convinced means to believe with certainty, that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. Bill W. separates the two. We are the us. And then there's a foreign installment, there's a parasitical movement called self. The one parasite has captured tons of hosts. You go to meetings. When I went to the first meetings, I felt I had a thick skin of terminal uniqueness. I did not believe, I thought no one thought like me, no one felt like me, no one did the heinous things that I did. But what do we share at AA meetings? We share our thoughts, our behaviors, our feelings. And after a few months, I could only come to 2 conclusions. How did these people get my thoughts, or they're not my thoughts? And the freedom is seeing the thoughts you're calling yours as alcoholic thoughts. They're not yours. All of us are being driven by the same broadcast. There's one parasite inhabiting many, many hosts. And if you don't believe me, look at our community. How many of us, being so different, end up parking in the same 3 parking spaces? Institutions, jails, and death. We would never choose that as a vacation spot, would you? I wasn't sitting at a coffee table looking at brochures of Hawaii, Barbados, and Delancey Street. Yeah? My managing my own life caused me to have to be managed by other people. I had to be supervised. That's not freedom. That's slavery. Something has taken us over, and it's using us for transportation. If you see it as something other than you, you can entertain being free from it. If you see it as you, you'll try to be free as it, which is the bondage of self. So what happened is, I went to that meeting and I felt something. I felt hope, and I hadn't felt hope in a long time. And that feeling of hope allowed me to feel how hopeless I was. The first step was very, very clear. I already knew I was powerless over alcohol and drugs, and my life had become unmanageable. But I don't believe that. I don't look at it as cause and effect. I do not believe your use produced the unmanageability. I believe your trying to manage is the producer of the unmanageability. I am not managerial quality. I do not do well when I'm directing. I do well when I'm directed. I do not do well when I'm leading. I do well when I'm led. Yes? I submit myself to this program and I get changed. I've never changed a freaking thing. I get changed. This is what the program does. The program takes me on a journey, which they talk about in the fear inventory. Perhaps there's a better way. Trusting something infinite rather than finite self. How does it look to be trusting finite self? It's having faith in the thoughts that are running through your head. This parasite is very, very hostile, and it has a great strategy. It convinces the host that it's the host. So you can never entertain being free from it. If you saw it land on you, you would knock it off 100 times out of 100 times. Now, when it enters a topic in our life, when we recognize it, we call it me. That's the bondage of self. So I went to that meeting. The second step to me is, like it says in the book, the first step is a reflective step, and so is the second. The first step is you reflect on what it was like before you got sober. The second step is reflecting what it's like after you got sober. I believe the second step's an observational step. You realize you haven't drank in 8 weeks. You've come to believe that something greater than you can do for you what you can't do for yourself. I saw the first 2 months, I wasn't in jail, I hadn't drank, which was an impossibility before. So I came to believe in a power greater than myself. So the third step, in a sense, looked incredibly valuable to me because I had already experienced the spirit of it. I had turned my will and life over to Delancey Street for 2 years. And when I left there, I didn't like them. I didn't like their ideas and the way they did things, but I had to begrudgingly admit that my life looked better with them running it than it ever did with me running it. I could turn my life over to, well, not everyone in this room, but a few of you, and you would do a better job with it than I do. Why is that? We have so much vested interest in our life, it's the fucking up element. We have to get out of self to do well. So what happened is, and the thing is, every one of us surrender all the time. I've surrendered to women, I've surrendered to the police, I surrendered to drugs. The effect of the surrender is what you surrender to. It's not the act of surrender, it's what you surrender to. And to me, the greatest result I ever got out of all the surrenders has been the surrender to this program. It's allowed me to live 29 years. I have guardrails, G-O-D rails, because this car, this action figure, veers off. It goes left when it should go straight. And the principles of the program are a North Star. I can plot a course by those principles because they override circumstances and situations. So the third step, I was looking forward to it. And I put it to the test. And I'm telling you, it delivered the goods. And now I have a sense-feltness to what I have surrendered to. I sense the conscious presence of that loving power. Step 4 is I do an inventory. But I don't do an inventory on me. I do an inventory of how self defeated me. And if you read that statement, self manifested in various ways as what has defeated us. And it goes to, and if you're convinced of this, we will now look at some of its common manifestations. And the next paragraph starts with the word resentment. Why are you calling a resentment yours for? It's an expression of self. It's a manifestation of self in one's life. We are in the act of being identified as the parasite because we're calling its manifestations our manifestations. How are you going to be free as that which is binding you? You have to be from it. So step 5 is I saw how self defeated me, and I shared it with another person, and he illuminated even more. And so 6 and 7 are the most active steps after you've been sober a while. They're what you're doing all day. And when I go to meetings and I hear people share about their alcoholism, it's not their alcoholism, it's our alcoholism. And if something triggers in me by your share, I immediately take it to step 6 and 7. I say, I'm entirely ready to have this removed because the possibility of removal is based on you catching it right out of the oven. This isn't a forensic unit. You want to catch it when it's alive. Yeah? And then I surrender and I humbly ask that power to remove it. And in the presence of tradition 2 at a meeting, a loving God is expressing itself in our group conscience. There's grace there. You can be changed. You can be put to maximum use. And what's left behind is of maximum use. It's not about you going to be great. It's about your service to others. So 6 and 7 is constantly available. Step 8, I made that inventory. I wrote down who I freaking harmed in the pursuit of what I wanted and all that shit. Step 9, I made the amends, if I possibly could. And it was the most freeing step of all. I mean, my first reaction is it was amazing. I hit step 9, and I had been conveniently avoiding stuff for years. Suddenly, they were running into them. And my first reaction, I'd see when I owed money to. I wanted to turn left, but AA kept me right there. And I said, bro, I never paid that phone bill. I gave him $42, yes? This one time was incredible. I was with my friends. We used to ride motorcycles, and we went to my friend's apartment, and I had my new girlfriend who I was trying to impress, and he had his new girlfriend. And as we were going up, a woman went by, and she had paint on her jeans, and I was a house painter. My friend went back to his bike, came back up, and says, hey, my neighbor wants to talk to you. I think she wants to get painting advice. So I said, sure. She walks in and she says, hey, Paul, do you remember me? I don't remember. She says, you owe me $500. So here I am in the situation where they say in AA, hey, listen, you got to be willing to save your ass instead of your face. But when I came in here, I thought my face was my ass. I was trying to save an image of me, not my ass. I die to be right. So I did the amends to the best of my ability, and I was freed from the past, not regretting it nor shutting the door on it. Yeah? This whole program has worked me, and it continues to work me. I don't work any steps. They have become, the gratitude is infused in my attitude now. I'm not thinking about going to a meeting, I'm thinking about which one. I have the greatest insurance policy. My program is based on habit now. And habit are actions without thought. And if the problem resides in the thought system, you don't want it to have much of a say concerning your sobriety. You cannot let the problem dictate the solution. Step 11 talks about prayer and meditation. I said a prayer for 5 years every day for the first 5 years, because the worst time of my day is when I woke up. I still thought I was under the old managerial team, and it scared the living shit out of me. I was in such anxiety that I was going to be managing the show. So I reminded myself by saying the first 3 steps. I am Paul, I'm an addict and an alcoholic, and I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs. And my life has become unmanageable. I have come to believe a power greater than myself can restore to me Saturday, and I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to it. I said it religiously, no matter who I was with or where I was, and then one day it stopped completely because it was a mere substitute for the spiritual presence. Once the spiritual presence was available, there was no need to pray to it anymore. You could rest in it, yeah? What would be the greatest form of spiritual maintenance? Realize you're a spiritual condition. You'll feel meditated all day. You'll sense the presence, not as an experience, but as a reality. Your solution will be always available at all times, right where you are. You have now moved from a failed system of trusting something finite to a workable system of trusting something infinite. The difference between us and self. Then you adapt the agenda of AA. You practice these principles in all your affairs, and if you can't do that, limit your affairs and help other people achieve sobriety. And you have it by giving it away. I'm not a believer you have to have it to give it away. I believe if you're willing to give it away, you'll have it. I've heard some of the greatest shit out of a newcomer who's been in for 3 hours. That loving God is expressing itself in our group conscious. It can come through any one of us. It is not the messenger, it's the message. If you're willing to be used, you'll be used, and you'll be better off for it. I'm going to leave the body soon. I'm getting way high. I'm going to have to stop. I may need medical attention. This is the 3rd talk today, and yes.
I'd like to thank Paul one more time. Our sister group is a big book study on Thursday, 7:30 at Salem UCC Church, 186 East 4th Street. Come over. We'd like to read that book, and we'd like to try to discover all the secrets in it and try to live it and apply it to our lives. Please, if you can, form a line. Thank Paul for coming out. If you'd like, give him a nice Doylestown welcome. And if you've got a nice way of closing, if you care to join us. Thanks for coming out.